What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm BDLM coming to you with my buddy J4Y as I become a giant rectangle yet again.
Yes, you do. Perfect timing.
It was great. I liked it. Welcome to episode number 31, the last of our little mini-series here. Bringing you information about the 3 newest heroes to join Dota 2. What is going on, buddy?
Not a whole lot. Oh man, this has been the perfect ending of a trifecta, I would say, on a hero that we are so well informed on. You know, I mean, just who hasn't heard of this Gyrocopter guy?
The Gyrocopter.
You know what I call him? I want to call him the Gyrocopter.
There
That's
you
an
go.
Armenian thing, actually. Actually, I think it might be Greek, but it's from my heritage in some way or fashion. I don't know. I'm just going with it. You know, it is like a gyro in that first word, and apparently he rides a copter and hands out gyros to all the favorite little boys and girls in the world.
Yeah.
So, how are
Very
you?
generous guy.
You doing good?
I'm doing, man. The coffee's kicking in, which is great because I unfortunately woke up just before we started doing these things. And I was like, CK. But no, I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm still like the brightest thing on the face of the planet, according to my Skype. But I'm doing great, man. And this is a hero that I'm actually really interested in talking about because I think he's a very weird hero. It's very strange, and it's funny seeing people try to build him. And you and I had a very interesting experience with a Gyrocopter build.
Yes, we did. We'll get into that build just a little bit here when we talk about items, but let's start off just maybe introduce people to this hero since he's not super familiar, I think, for most people. Especially in Dota 1, he was around, but he was kind of released, actually pretty deep into Dota 1, so not been around super duper long, I would say. But either way, he's an agility ranged hero. He fires. He's he's got a decent attack range. I believe it is 375. Okay, it's not that decent at all, but it's it's a little. I think it's 25 greater than Morphling. So
there you go.
He's competitive against Morphling. There you go. So he's got these 4 abilities. The first one here being Rocket Barrage. So basically what he does with this, he activates it for 90 mana. It's for 3 seconds. He'll fire out 30 rockets, and each one is going to do 11 up to 20 damage per rocket. This is a 7-second cooldown, goes down to 5.5, and this is a 400 radius around him. So kind of an interesting start of the hero abilities.
Yeah, it's really strange because he's a ranged hero, but you want people to be close to you.
Yes.
Kind of like a shorter range Starstorm. So you want them to be close enough to you that you can actually get that second star drop. You're really hoping that they're in close enough range that you can be able to hit people repeatedly with these rockets. I mean, it's actually a pretty decent amount of damage that comes out to it once you start doing that fancy multiplication, being able to get so many of those rockets to hit on individual targets. The mana cost stays at 90, which is pretty good. He's actually a hero that, oddly enough, is fairly mana-intensive for being an agility, which is something that I'm sure we'll address once we get to the items. But yeah, just a weird starting ability, that's for sure.
I do like comparing him to Mirana, because I feel like he is similar in that way. I think he is like this. He is this agility kind of semi-carry, but he's so spell dependent. Like he uses spells very thoroughly throughout the fights. And then the next one is one that is a very, very interesting ability, needless to say, called Homing Missile. So this one, it's a little complicated. Basically, he has to kind of set up this missile where it's 1,050 cast range, and so he targets it on the enemy, and it starts setting up the missile right where he is. And I believe it's what is it, like a 1 to 2 second setup time? It's a pretty decent amount of time it takes to get kind of going. But then it fires off into the air and starts traveling towards the target. And it's going to keep going on that target until it's either killed by auto attacks. It does have health, so you can bring it down with auto attacks, or obviously it just hits the target and then it does the damage, and it stuns for 2.5 seconds, which is really great. And the damage actually increases over time, so the farther it travels, the more damage it's going to deal.
Yes, it's a really neat ability. I think this is the one I'd probably prioritize. I think he's a really strong ganker. Like we were saying, describing with Mirana, this is kind of like the dependable arrow, but you might be able to outrun it. So it's like, yeah, it's definitely going to hit, but is it going to hit somewhere where we can actually take advantage of the position or not, I think becomes the question. And, will it survive the trip there? Does it have to fly past the tower? Does it have to fly past other heroes? It does a pretty good amount of damage, that maximum distance. 440 damage at rank 4, so really bursty still there, and 1,050 cast range. It's really far range. And like you said, it does have this sort of setup time where it's, I think, like 2 or 3 seconds, where it has to sit there and then it'll take off and follow the person. But I think that is a decent amount of setup time that allows you to actually move around, get close enough so when the missile finally starts getting close, you can actually be in a perfect position to take advantage of that stun.
Yeah, and you were talking about that max distance to do the most damage. It's actually 2,000 units is the exact number. It's hard to calculate that when you're shooting this thing off, but obviously that's a pretty decent distance, needless to say. It's pretty much double the range of this cast is how far it has to go to do its max damage. So that's kind of an easier way to think about it. And actually, this is another interesting thing, because when I was playing that game, I was actually describing it when he was playing PA and getting last hits of Stifling Dagger. He was against a Gyrocopter, and he was wondering why that homing missile, when it was shot at him, why the tower wasn't able to kill it in time when it hit him. It's always got to him. Towers do half damage to the missile. So it's actually an interesting thing to note there. And I just didn't even think about it. I'm like, I don't know. Why does the tower not have able to kill it? Heroes and towers, the only things that are actually able to attack it. So minions cannot, or creeps, minions cannot attack this little missile thing.
Crazy thing. Yeah, I mean, it's, I think, a good amount of even just, like, burst, harass, damage kind of thing. I mean, obviously, it gets expensive, and that's what's going to limit you. But like you're saying, it's... Hey, I mean, the tower can't bring it down in time, so you can force somebody to run away, basically. Kind of like the cold feet on Ancient Apparition. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's not like a lot of damage, but the person has to run away, essentially, or else they're going to get stunned for a long amount of time. So you have to sort of run away from it, because if you get stunned, they're going to be able to go in on you. But of course, the further away you run from it, the more damage you're going to take. So you kind of have to play this sort of middle ground of what's an appropriate amount of damage to take, and where can you safely be stunned.
Yeah, see, I mean, the good thing is the stun does not scale. So, like, if you're still running, you're not going to get stunned for longer. It's going to be 2.5 seconds regardless. But that's a good stun. I mean, 2.5 seconds, I mean, that's a pretty long stun, and that's going to give you enough time to set up, hopefully, and be able to do your follow-up moves, which we're going to get into. Well, you want to go in that third move really quick?
I do, since you've done the first two, jerk.
I do the exciting one, so it's cool.
Yeah. There you go. The flag cannon, which has an 800 radius, basically gives you an area attack sort of thing. Attacks everybody in that radius for a certain number of attacks or time. So it's 15 seconds or 3, 4, 5, 6 attacks. Static mana cost, 50 seconds. Static cooldown, 20 seconds. His attack range remains the same. So say it's 375, but you actually will hit people in an 800 radius around you as long as you're attacking someone. Really kind of neat, and it's one of the few abilities that these sort of agility semi-carries have where they can actually apply any of their attack damage in an area. And this, I think, kind of falls in line with the Rocket Barrage and just kind of making Gyrocopter one of these few heroes that can just do a ton of area damage, has the ability to do a lot in team fights, where a lot of other agility heroes can't.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're gonna get his ultimate a little bit, but that's just all of his abilities, like you said, just except for homing missile, which is a good initiation tool, which allows him to set up the rest of the stuff. But Flat Cannon is an interesting ability, I think. The cooldown is pretty long, which makes it not as great as it probably could be. But the 50 mana cost, obviously, is a no-brainer. It's really efficient. And the 800 radius is a big radius, so it's going to allow you, like you said, to hit a lot of people in a small amount of time. So obviously all his abilities being these like AoE abilities, going to do well with heroes that allow you to set up kind of AoE things in a team fight. We'll get into this a little bit down the road, but yeah, call down. Alright, do you want to do the ultimate since I did the first two?
Yeah, I do.
You know what, I'll let you. Go ahead.
Call down basically makes 2 explosions in this area after a certain duration. These hits will fall on an area, applying a slow and damage. The first one does more damage at a lower slow. The second one does less damage, but a greater slow. So potentially a 50% movement speed slow, and a total of 550 damage This can be affected by the Aghanim Scepter, increasing the damage of the second strike and also giving it global range. The original range, actually 1,000, so pretty big, and with a 400 radius. So I think that's a really sort of neat thing. We're trying to make this Marana comparison. Interesting that he also does get this sort of global presence when you get that Aghanim Scepter. But even without it, 1,000 range is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same range as his homing missile. So I mean, that's actually really far. Not going to have trouble using it, and it's right as you cast it. I mean, it starts firing the missiles down, so you know it's not like any setup time or anything. Now it is that it is a couple seconds it takes for it to land at the area, so you have to be good with your timing, or have, like I was saying before, heroes out help you keep people in place long enough that you can set this up on the. But it, you know, like I said, it's a decent radius. 400 is not bad, so. You know, it's going to hit a decent amount of people regardless if you can just put it at least somewhere in the lane in a reasonable place. I think it's an interesting mechanic how it does fire the two missiles, one doing more damage less slow, the second one doing the opposite. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. What are you doing?
How did we never think of this before?
I don't know.
Can you just fathom the synergy with Pit Lord?
Oh my gosh.
New meta.
It's a
Gyrocopter Pit Lord. That's why it's not in the game yet. They didn't want to break Dota 2 yet. They're waiting. They're just going to try and make it last as long as possible. Oh, there you go, my friend. I think Enigma is like the big one, where you can just be like...
For all of you non-knowledgeables or non-cult followers like me, Pit Lord essentially is a hero that has this really big radius AoE, and it doesn't do damage, but it roots everyone in there for a couple seconds. So... yeah, throwing that with the call down and everything else is just actually pretty fantastic sounding. I'm kind of curious about it. If only one of our friends will play Gyrocopter, but
I'll do it. Don't worry, I'll be that guy. One. I'll take the hit. Yeah,
take the hit. This guy's wonderful. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, as far as playing a hero that I'm not, all that familiar with. I think Enigma's the competitive one, obviously. That's going to really let you set things up. I'm actually, while we're going through this, I'm thinking of some like hilarious item builds that I think would just be great. So I don't know if we want to get into that just yet.
Why not?
I really, well, because I would like. Okay, I guess we can. I think we could start that with the Aghanims, which I think is swell. I think I would probably try and get it most of the time, I want to say, just because too you consider he has such a short range anyway. The rocket barrage is kind of a small area as well, so being able to get the point booster and then the ogre club, I think good ways to get yourself some health, get yourself some additional int as well for that mana pool, because these are relatively expensive spells for him being an agility hero. I think that's just an overall great item. It might, sort of take out some of your late game semi-carry potential, but just the ability to drop that call down from anywhere on the map. By the way, we didn't mention this. The cooldown goes down to 45 seconds.
That's pretty important.
So it's like, it's Ancient Apparition ulti cooldown short.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
And it does a ton of damage and a huge slow, so just a really great way to gank another part of the map.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to... The thing with that, I like it. Definitely, the Valve actually put that in the situational items for him, and I agree. I don't think it's a core item, and the reason I say that, first of all, the damage increase for the second missile, pretty minimal. Let's be honest. It's 75 damage, so yeah, not a big deal. But obviously, you get it for the global presence, and there's different ways to look at that. And one way, you're like, oh man, I can set this up from across the map. It'd be really cool to help him out, but at the same time, that means you're not with your team if you're using full advantage of that, which means, it kind of like gives this other vibe of like, well, why aren't you with your team? Are you just farming a lane? Like, with, Flat Cannon, that makes him a decent pusher, but it's 20-second cooldown, and Rocket Barrage, sort of decent for pushing, but not great. So I don't like him in like a, I'm going to push here and then use my ult to help the team out. Like you said, it's got its advantages, but at the same time, I kind of get this kind of bad vibe from it too. I don't know. What do you think?
I think he has some really strange potential, and this one was saying earlier. I was thinking about different items that you could go on him, because I was actually looking through some guides, doing my research this week, trying to figure out what other people were trying to do with this hero to make him good. And a lot of people actually really kind of like Force Staff and Blink Dagger and Lothars, these items that let you get in and out fairly decently. At first I was like, that's sort of weird, but I think if you actually pick up items like that, that gives you some good split push potential, because I think between the flat cannon as well as the rocket barrage, you can actually push a lane pretty quickly. You can farm pretty decently as well. And so I think those abilities really do let you, if you do pick up the Aghanim Scepter, you can push fairly safely and then force staff yourself out, or go invis and Lothar's out. And yeah, I know the general problem with Lothar's is like, well, then you just dust. But I mean, you're picking up an item that's making the enemy team spend money, and in public game situations as well, for just when you're playing, I mean, that's going to potentially give you some outs, because people just won't buy it to just try and counter poor little Gyrocopter.
I don't like Blink. I'll admit that right now. I don't like Blink on him. But I do actually like the idea. I like Lothar's, like you were saying. I think that has some good potential, because it'll give him damage is what he needs, as well as that kind of out in a lot of situations. Force Staff's interesting. I don't actually mind it, because it'll give a damage. It'll give you a mana pool increase, and obviously that mobility's that's just nice to have on a team in general. I've said this time and time again. I love that item on pretty much anyone, just because of how much different things it can contribute to a fight. So I mean, it might look a little trolly to see that on AGI carry, but I'm not going to call him a carry, semi-carry. That's probably a little more accurate. But
Yeah.
definitely not a bad choice indeed. And then going into more of the bigger items, you could boots-wise, what do you think? Do you see arcane boots as a better idea, or would you like to more see P-treads?
I in my head, when you asked me, I was like, steam boots, and I was like, wait, no, P-treads. Third time's a charm. I like both, honestly. I think you could go either way with it. I kind of do like the arcane boots quite a bit, but I could also see getting the stats. The attack speed, okay, whatever. That's fine. But, I'm actually thinking he kind of feels almost like a Vengeful Spirit, where sort of, if you were to play Vengeful Spirit in that sort of quote-unquote carry role, which I don't think is really a good way to describe it, because you don't get, like, carry items. Like, I guess you could say Mana Styles is, a carry item, but it seems like when you go the carry Vengeful Spirit, you get like Aghanims. You get items that really are about just increasing your ability to help out the team. And I think that's really interesting when you consider that on Gyrocopter, because your flat cannon is going to give you a lot of damage in team fight situations. You're attacking everyone in an 800 radius, so you don't have to do a lot of damage, because once you start splitting that up between 5 people, it's a good amount not of burst damage, not to be able to like take one person out really quickly, but just overall sustain damage really good. And I think that's also interesting when we're talking about items like Lothar's and Force Staff. You have these area abilities. You kind of want to be like on top of people, but picking up Lothar's, picking up the Force Staff is going to let you get out as well as maybe even get in. And two, people were saying, with the homing missile, because it has that setup time, it has that travel time, you can sort of put yourself in a good situation. If you have these mobility type items, you can just jump out on top of somebody and just be able to burst them down and come out of nowhere. If you're mid and you're ganking one of the other lanes, you lay out your homing missile, you go Lothar's invisible, you're sitting right next to somebody, and as soon as they come into range, the missile comes into range of them, or they can see the missile, you pop your rocket barrage and you start doing tremendous amounts of damage to them. And I think he's really one of these agility heroes that's just really good at ganking. I think that's how you kind of have to play him if you're looking to play him.
Yeah, he's not going to be toe-to-toe with another AGI carry and win a fight.
No.
That's just not going to happen. He's really good at, like you said, setting up ganks, setting up kills with the rest of his team, like coordinating kills. I think, like you said, I think that's a really great way to look at him. Being a team fight player, a true team fight player. So that's why I was also saying I don't really like seeing him in that, like, global presence, because I feel like he's going to be with his team, at least a couple people, all the time. I mean, yeah, there could be times where that might be necessary to have a global snipe or something, like if someone's getting away, or who knows, if you want to kill Roshan and you want to snipe it with your ultimate, God knows. But, I think you're going to see him a lot with his team for the most part, and I think the 1,000 range is pretty good for that. But yeah, either way, it could be helpful.
So let me ask you this: what would you say would be like a really good item to get instead of that Aghanim Scepter for the type of play you're suggesting?
A couple different things. I'd either like to see actually like a Maelstrom, perchance, start out with that to get really good pushing potential, as well as really good teamfight potential. Also, I'd like to see, I just like to see in general on-hit proc things. I believe it works at Flat Cannon.
Mm.
And that's why.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
I'm not 100%, but I'm actually pretty sure of that. Now, the chain lightning, okay, yeah, that's not going... But either way, you're going to hit multiple people, so it doesn't matter. But like an MKB, crit chance with a Daedalus, things like that. Daedalus, for sure. I do like crit chance on him a lot, actually. Just because, with the flat cannon, like you said, it's just going to hit. If you get a nice 1,000 crit, that's going to hit everyone in 800 radius for 1,000 crit. You know, so I think that could be a really good thing. But he doesn't have that built-in attack speed, which is why I like to see treads on him a lot more. But arcane boots, I mean, either way, it's going to be really helpful to have those.
Yeah, I think you have to sort of make that decision if you're going to try and be like the semi-carrier, if you're going to be that team support. Because I mean, I like drums on him a lot too. I think that's a really fantastic item just to get some general tankiness, because you are going to have to be in a sort of dangerous range to be really effective. And this sort of allows you to speed up, get into fights very easily, and get into those situations where you're going to be able to pump out a lot of that damage. But yeah, not troll at all item. You ready for this?
I think so.
E-Blade. No. Fire the homing missile. Pop the E-Blade on them. And then they get hit by the missile, which does magical damage. They blow up.
Ethereal Blade, for people who are not sure what E stands for. Yeah, okay. Going for the shotgun Gyrocopter.
Try to not like it. I dare you. I think Ring of Aquila is a maybe safer.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you don't want to go the arcane boots, but you still want... You need mana, let's be honest. I mean, that's a great choice as well to get the mana regen and the stats from the Wraith Band. And then you can go your treads and still have your attack speed from that. So it's another choice, obviously. That depends what you want to go. And like, it'd be really nice if your lane mate gets arcade boots. Then you're really set, honestly. So, you know, maybe just coordinate that with whoever you're with, and that can go a lot better.
Would you rather see him in a lane or rather see him solo mid?
I like to see him in a lane. Because I like his gank ability. I like his the way his homing missile will set up with someone else. That's the thing. It's a 2.5 second stun. If you can catch someone off guard, let's for example, you like go to the side of the woods or you go behind a tree and then get in that 1,000 range and set up a missile. By the time they see it coming, like you were saying before, it's already kind of too late. It's going to hit them. And someone else, your lane mate, if they have a nice stun or slow to follow that up with, you get a decent amount of burst damage out, honestly. I mean, solo mid works too, don't get me wrong, but his attack range is just so short that I don't really love him in that role for that reason.
Yeah, I suppose I could see that as well. I mean, I think I would prefer him solo mid just because if you are homing missiling people for the lulls, it's hard for them to get out of it because they don't have another hero that can attack it while you're running away. You can pretty much ensure that they're going to get hit by it, and I think that gives him a lot of power being able to gank other lanes because he has access to both the other lanes, and so he's going to be ganking people that have potentially multiple slows or stuns to be able to try and take somebody out. And I think that really is, like we've been describing, really kind of his niche, being maybe the strongest agility ganker that there is.
Whew, that's a big statement.
That is. That's why I threw maybe in front of it. Because, you know, but I do think that's really the role that he fits best, is being able to roam and gank, disrupt the early game and the mid game to be able to make something happen towards the mid and later parts of the game.
You're going to get so much flack from people about making that statement.
A lot of flat cannon.
Oh!
Yeah. Oh! Yeah, I don't care. It's fine. I mean, maybe a big statement, but I do think that is what he is best at.
Right.
Let me put it that way.
He's the team fight guy. That's kind of his role. I mean, especially when it hits 6. I mean, like I do like if he rushes to 6 in solo mid and then gets to the lane, and it's 1,000 range. So I mean, he's going to probably be able to set that up in the lane really easily, and then that slow is going to help finish off everyone else that's trying to get out of there. So,
and I think too, if you are doing that, you are getting the super range on your homing missile and the ultimate lane. You get a kill. The flat cannon and the barrage are going to pull the lane so fast. I think you could very easily, and even in the other parts of the game, even before 6, you could put some crazy pressure on a tower if you're able to generate a kill with the homing missile, and that's something you have to take into consideration.
So taking into consideration, will we see this guy in the pro scene?
Yeah, and I think we'll see him with Radiance, like we saw him in our pub game, because why wouldn't you?
No, actually, the more we talked about this hero, it's not the worst item. The reason being, we were saying...
It's not the worst item,
well,
but...
of course, but you're saying we want him to be in the middle of the fight. We want him to be up front doing all this AoE damage around him, Radiance is AoE damage around them. I mean, and it adds that flat, huge damage, 60 attack damage for flat cannon attacks. I mean, there could be worse options.
There could be worse options. I will 100% agree with that. But I think the big problem with him, because he is like an agility hero, you need the health more than you need the damage, because I think his abilities on their own do plenty of damage. I don't think he lacks for damage. What he lacks is the ability to do it repeatedly in a team fight, because the Rocket Barrage 5.5-second cooldown. So he can put out plenty of damage in the team fights. He just needs to be able to have the mana pool and the health to do it, which is why, and the ability to move in and out of fights, which is why I think like the Shadow Blade, the Algorithm Scepter, even giving you the stats. I mean, I think there are a lot better choices you could make to try and do that.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
So competitive-wise, though, yeah, what do you think? No.
I think it's cool. I think when we get our pro team together,
of course,
we're gonna have to try it. I think he's neat. I'd love to see him. I think it'd be fun to watch. I think he has the potential to catch teams off guard, and maybe international too. He'll be like the hot button. Everybody should be like, you know what, Gyrocopter, let's do it. Band pick.
Go.
That's, it's gonna.
No one expects the Gyrocopter.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's unfortunately not going to see him, but I would love to. I'm thinking we have to force someone in our group of friends to play him.
No one's
for sure.
Play him.
No,
that's the problem. They're so afraid to just go for it. Just try something new. They're like, oh, I'm going to suck. It's like, well, who cares? That's what the whole point is. How many times do you play with people who suck? I mean, it's not the end of the world that you might be one of the reasons your team loses that game. It's just
I do it all the time,
exactly.
right? Like
I have to deal with you on a repeated basis, and it's just unfortunate. But
there you go. I think that's pretty much the Gyrocopter thing, man, isn't it?
I think.
Do you have
so
any other?
well. No, I don't have a lot of thoughts at all about this topic. So.
Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. We appreciate any feedback you can give. Obviously, this is a quite different setup than we've done in other weeks, so we would really appreciate your feedback, your criticism, your critique, your love, your hate, your celebration. I don't know. Join us next week for our next installment of maybe this miniseries. Maybe we'll go back. Who knows? It'll be crazy. But we will see you there on the next episode of the Dota on Demand podcast.